Hello, welcome to Happiness and Wellness with Geeta Arora. My name is Paula Pacheco, and I'm here to help Geeta answer some questions about yoga and Ayurveda and how these two sister sciences come together. These ancient intuitive sciences help with peace of mind, and in this crazy, incredibly busy world we all live in today. Now, with that, I'd like to introduce Geeta Arora, author of Divine Delight and an expert practitioner in yoga and Ayurveda. Geeta, can you please tell us, why is this so important in our society today?
Sure. Well, thank you for that introduction, Paula.
You're welcome.
So let's take a look. First of all, looking at the comfort we live in our society, we have everything accessible to us, from technology, taking vacations, to parties, to anywhere you want to go. It's all available to us through technology or through cars or planes. So why in this time of so much comfort is there so much stress? There's a question to ask. And our society, it conditions us in a way to have instant gratification. You know, having things that whatever you want, you can have it right away. Having a career, having money, having success, all of it is tied into a very impulsive behavior. So that takes us into, you know, the problems that we have, the breakdowns we have in life. And with that, you know, it causes us to have, you know, exhaustion and confusion. And then there's, you know, you got to think about your career, your family, and a lot of times the kids are involved, and then there's overwhelm and not knowing how to process all of that. It's a place where people come into a breakdown mode, and then they look for alternative ways to see what can help them balance their life with their work, with their families, and all the different ways that they can access some peace of mind.
Wow, you've defined that wonderfully. How did you learn about Ayurveda?
Oh, well, I came to Ayurveda because I was 27 years old, and I was told that I had cancer. I had about 2 to 6 months left to live, and I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And at that time, the only thing I was told to do was to get chemotherapy as my last alternative to save my life. And I found an Ayurvedic doctor by universal coincidence. And in that, I was healed in 3 weeks through Ayurvedic medicine, through lifestyle and the foods I was eating and different types of ways of looking at my body and mind in a way I didn't understand before. It was a new perspective from the normal conditioning of our society that I got to see myself. So I went back to the corporate world. At that time I was in the corporate world. When I went back, I just saw that how we create disease. We are responsible for our own health, but we just don't know about it.
Wow. Geeta, what are the effects in our society? And how did this awareness change your life?
So, you know, let's see, the balance of our time and food and energy and money is such a significant part of our being that a lot of times, you know, we don't even pay attention to that. And let's see, I'm going to just go to a new slide here. What do we do here? Oh. So with that, we have our way of being, and this is your life. And there's all these different areas of life. One could be family, one could be career, one could be relationships, and so forth. There's so many different areas of your life. But you know, if one area has some issues with it, it impacts the entire life. So there's a little story, which is there's a ship, and there's a shipwreck. So there's a little boat, and there are 3 men. They jump into the boat to save their life, but they don't get along. So the three of them have to figure out how they're going to make it happen. So they draw two lines and in thirds, and they say, you know, we're all going to stay on our side till we get to a place of being safe. So what happens is the guy in the middle, his part of the boat starts to have a hole in it, and there's water starts coming in, and the other two guys are like, hey, you know, do something about it because there's water coming in. And he looks at them and he says, mind your own business. Take care of your own sides. So it's the same thing, you know, it's like one area of your life, like spirituality or finance or career or relationship. We are all one piece of a human being, you know, so it's very important that we look at all factors as one piece, not separate. And do I have another question there?
Oh, well, that was a great story. I was just thinking about it. How can people find balance in the world today?
Well, that was the way to look at balance. You know, balance is a way of looking at your entire being. And what happens is a lot of times people, when they run to the doctor for medicines, it's usually for symptoms. And Ayurveda is what I practice. It gives you an indication of how to take care of your health and well-being from a preventative standpoint. And we all have choices, you know, we all have choices. It depends on where you are. A lot of times people will say, I'm fine where I'm at. I'm not ready to make a change. Life is fine. You know, I get up in the morning and I go to bed and everything else in between, it doesn't work so well, but you know, that's life. So they make a choice and they plan on, you know, staying where they are. And then other people, they want to make a change. So with that, they turn to some sort of a mind-body balancing. And in mind-body balancing, we're looking at what are the questions that start to stem from a deep place within, when things are just not working. You know, who am I? Why am I in this mess? Why is my life looking like this? When you turn to these deeper spiritual questions of trying to find yourself, that's when we start to turn within. And the external world, the external world, it becomes a lot more like it's too busy. So we want to find answers in looking at what's in there. What the answers are always deep within. So with that, you know, it takes us into the quest for Ayurveda and Yoga.
Well, how are they related?
Well, that's a great question because they both stem from the SomeCare Philosophy. SomeCare Philosophy is a way of thinking back in India, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this was founded by sage Kapila, and these were ancient scientists who used to meditate and look into within to connect with the higher consciousness to find answers. So these are philosophical systems from India that's over 5,000 years old. And the way that it has survived throughout all these years is that the information was always given from a guru to a student, a teacher to a student. And in that, there was an understanding of, they were called Sutras, and I'll show you what they are. But Sutras are like a thread. In Sanskrit, it means a woven tapestry of like insight and your direct experience of what you can have. So with this, I'm going to explain to you a little bit more about the SomeCare Philosophy, what it is, and let's see. So first of all, there's this concept of pure consciousness, and in Sanskrit it's called Purusha. Then there is the manifested energy, the creative forces, and that's called Prakriti. Prakriti also translates to nature in Sanskrit. So with that, when Prakriti merges with Purusha, it creates Mahad, which is the higher intellect. And when the higher intellect is activated, it's called Buddhi, the higher way of seeing. So a lot of times, we as human beings, we don't have the ability to understand who God is. And SomeCare Philosophy is not about God. It's just about the reality of what the qualities of the human nature is. So in this, and later on, it was, when Hinduism came around, it was then translated into understanding this whole concept as male and female, and then so forth. So I'll stick to this because this is a deep subject, and I just have a few minutes to explain this right now. So with Mahad, the higher intellect, then the ego is created. And this is the first place where the ego has a self-identity. There's a way of saying I. It has a way of knowing who that is. And with that, there are three qualities that are created, which is called sattva, rajas, and tamas. And this is the more the pure form, this is more of the transformational form, and this is the heavier inertia. And the I has this nature, and it can pick whichever nature it has. So sometimes, you know, when people say, I just can't change, you know, no matter how much I try, I just can't change, because that just might be their nature. That's why Ayurveda is so important, because it helps you to understand that if that's your nature and you know you're going to do those things, but it's not working in the world, here are the things you can do. So later on, I don't want to get too much into this, but just to finish explaining, so when this sattva nature, this pure form, and this very passionate nature come together, it creates the mind. The mind. And the mind is responsible for the five senses and the five organs of action. When rajas and tamas, when they come together, the inertia, the heaviness, that's when these five subtle elements are created, as well as the five gross elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space. That's how we get into Ayurveda. So in this, we can also look at us as human beings. You know, it's the I, and we have a nature, we have a mind that keeps getting us in trouble, and then there's the five elements that make up the whole body and mind. So with that, I hope that was a
Thank you, Geeta, for helping to make such a deep philosophy, helping us to understand it.
Sure.
Now, with yoga being practiced all over the world, is there an opportunity for, not an opportunity, can people injure themselves?
Well, you know, yoga, this is the perfect place to explain what yoga is. So the Sanskrit root word of yoga is yuj, means to join. So what is it joining? It's joining the higher and lower states of consciousness, and to understand what's beyond the body. So yoga explains a lot of the things that has to do with the mind. The practice is that you are able to bring your mind to a place where the thoughts cease to exist and you become who you are. You can tap into the essence of who you are. And when synchronized with Ayurveda, it becomes a powerful source of healing in the medical system. Yoga Sutras, so the Sutras, I explained what that means. It's a thread. So how it was translated is, I'll show you a sutra in a minute, but who wrote the Yoga Sutras? It was Sage Patanjali. And Sage Patanjali is said to be the founder, oops, my board is not working, of the Yoga Sutras. So he wrote that, he scribed that about 2,300 years ago. And this has become the source of the source text of understanding yoga. And the interesting part of it is, your question was that, do people hurt themselves in yoga? So yoga never talked about exercise, and I'll tap into that a little bit in just a bit, because I don't want to get off talking about the sutras first. So there are 195 verses that were written as the source of what yoga is. Out of that, there were only 3 sutras, only 3 verses that talks about asanas. Asanas are body poses. So in today's time, we're only practicing the body aspect of it, and you're, you know, doing headstands and fancy poses and looking cute and all that stuff, but it's all great, but it's not about the external way of being. Yoga is about the internal way of being. So then you wonder, what were the 195 sutras about? The other 192 sutras, what are they about? It's all about the mind, about how to work with the mind. Let's see, if we can get to back to the PowerPoint. So here's the definition of yoga that in the Patanjali Sutras. So what it says is, let's see, there. So what it's saying is that yogas chitta vritti nirodha. What that means is that yoga, with pure awareness of consciousness, is silencing the thought waves and misconceptions of the mind. because the mind is always, it's like a monkey, you know, it's always doing something. It wants to see things. The five senses are driving it. So it's always wanting to see things and hear things and taste things, and it's always busy. So the goal of life, of human life, according to Vedas also, is quietening the mind. That's the whole process of being human. When we can understand what the mind is doing, then there's a way of understanding who we are. And so the beginning of the very first verse of the Patanjali Sutras, as understanding what sutras are, it says, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. What that means is that now the experience, the practice of yoga begins. And these are sutras that are studied over and over again. So when one sits down and really gets into it to understanding what it is, they begin to experience and practice something more out of it. So it's gems of wisdom, you know, we recite it continuously with true students of yoga to understand how do you control the mind? How do you quieten it? And I think this explains some of your.
Well, I do have a question. Well, what are your thoughts about yoga teachers practicing today?
Yeah, well, that's great, because the emphasis, you know, of yoga is to keep the mind active and fresh and young. So it promotes clear thinking, and yoga is to be practiced so that you have, you know, you don't drug yourself, you don't hurt yourself, you practice nonviolence, you control your words, thoughts, and deeds and actions, so that, you know, you're able to be nice to people, and you can live in society and do things for society, be a contribution to society, eating the right amounts of food, not abusing yourself with food. Having good moral conduct. All those things are, when we start to practice ourselves and go within, you know what the right thing to do is, basically. And, you know, again, the mind is made up of the five senses. The five senses is constantly stimulating and making it do something. So it's the way of understanding, because the mind keeps you in constant conflict, and it makes the mind think about two things. You know, there are two things you want. One day you want it, next day you don't want it. One day you want it, you know, it just keeps, the pattern keeps going over and over again. So there's a constant internal struggle of wanting to have something and not want it, and want it and not want it. So it's a waste of energy and time, you know. So your question about modern yoga. So modern yoga, it should include more of the source of yoga. And they focus a lot on the physical body movements, and it's not bad. At least we're doing yoga. You'd rather be doing yoga than sitting in a nightclub or, you know, drinking yourself away. But it's yoga teacher training programs. I think they should incorporate a lot more of the Yoga Sutras, so you can understand what the source said about yoga. And breathing should not cost any money. You know, we should learn how to breathe, and that should be some part of, you know, your normal day-to-day experience. So yoga is a practice, you know, it's a practice. It's a way of understanding yourself, and it's unlike other philosophies. This is an important point, that it's not based on theory or science, on data, you know, to do research, but it is always rooted in a practice. Yoga is a practice. You cannot go and teach yoga. Yoga is an internal experience. That's all I'm going to say about this slide.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, because I want to get to the Ayurvedic part. So the goal of yoga is that you don't become a slave to your five senses, that you own what your mouth wants to do, that you own, when you see food, that you're not a slave to it. You know what you want at all times. And you understand the essence of who you are. Live your highest self. Are you living your life aligned with your highest values? And your body, breath, and mind patterns, communication, passions, relationships, all those things become aligned.
Thank you for that beautiful explanation. How does how does Yoda, I'm sorry.
I got you, Yoda.
How does Ayurveda define health?
Well, Ayurveda, by many medical scholars, it's called the mother of all medicine. It keeps the body and mind at an optimal level and keeps it aligned. The definition of yoga, Ayurveda, is they are sister sciences. You know, they stem from the same philosophy. So Ayurveda was there to take care of this body as a vessel. And yoga is to allow the internal self, the essence of who you are, to travel to a higher consciousness, to become part of your higher self. So how it's defined is that samadosha, samagnischa, samadhatu, malakriya, prasannatma indriya, manaha swastha iti abhyadhyate. So this is by Shushrut. He was the first surgeon in all of history, because he was the first person who did rhinoplasty. So the definition of this in Ayurveda, the perfect health, is one who is in perfect health when the three doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha, your digestive fire, your digestion, assimilation, metabolism, all the body tissues and components called the dhatus, the entire physical body, all the excretory functions, and are in perfect order with pleasantly disposed and contented body, mind, senses, and spirit. And this is a definition that was adopted by the WHO organization, the World Health Organization as well. So Ayurveda is based on the 5 elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space. And the difference between air and space, let's see if I can get to that. Well, let me get to this, and then I'll explain a little bit more. But when these combination of these elements, they start coming together. So if you have earth and the ether, it creates cold. If you've got ether and air, it creates the vata dosha, and it creates movement. If you've got air and fire, it's very light. If you've got fire and water, it's transformation. And water and earth, it's cohesion. So let me explain a little bit more about how they come together. So the vata dosha is a way that the air and space elements, they come together. Vata helps movement and oxygenation. So it helps to move things in the body. The other doshas cannot move without vata. And a balanced vata is, the body structure. They're thin boned, they're very spontaneous, they're adventurous, multitaskers, they're very trendy, they like fashion, they're very creative, and they change very quickly. And this would be your vata dosha. So going to the next one, when vata has imbalances, when there's extra air and space elements or lack of, when there's aggravation in the system, then you experience constipation or dryness, there's wrinkling, aging, feeling ungrounded. Some people have a very chatty way of being. They're just talking all the time because the vata might be aggravated, and they have anxiety, overexertion, and fatigue could be an easy way that they get off balance. For the pitta dosha, it's when the fire and water elements come together. So for these people, they have a lot more of these the metabolism and transformation processes in their body. When fire and water come together, it creates this heat in the system. And a balanced pitta, they have more of an athletic body type. They're more passionate. They have motivation. They like to look good. They seek attention. They're very logical and process oriented, and they like structure around everything. Very organized, and even the way their body structure looks is very athletic. And then the imbalances that pitta would have is the heat-related issues in the body, which has to do with like acne, acidity, ulcers, rashes, irritable bowel syndrome, and any heat-related problems in the body. For the kapha dosha, it's when the earth and water elements, they come together, and that's responsible for the heaviness in a system. So for these people, they tend to retain water and fluids much more easily. Their body tissues are very strong. As we can see here, kapha people are the strongest of all the body types. They're much more larger body types. And let's see if that's still on. Oh no. Well, that was my, took me back here. There. So with these people, they're nurturers. They're very caring. They're much more grounded. They're slow but steady. They're visionaries. They like to. They make great CEOs of companies because they have that. They're slow but steady. They don't jump to things very quickly as a pitta would or a vata would in different ways. An imbalanced kapha would be, the heaviness, the excess like water retention, cellulite, obesity, excess weight gain, and congestion.
Well, Geeta, how can people take better care of their health and wellness now?
Well, there are many ways of looking at their health and well-being. One of the primary ways is that, you know, if you know the if you know your dosha and you know your it's called a constitution. If you know your constitution, you know you're prone to certain things. And with that, if you have, suppose you have a cold, you know you're going to do hot things. If you have, you know, feeling very heavy, you want to do light things, and so forth. You know, it's a way of like moving yourself through your system. So you do the opposite. So the opposite will help. There's a principle of like attracts like in Ayurveda. So if you're really hot and imbalanced with heat, you're going to want more spicy food. You're going to want more things that make you burn in the body and make you sweat. And it feels really good. So you think that's normal, but it's not. It's, if you want to balance, you have to do the opposite. Those are the principles of Ayurveda. And so yoga for doshas. I don't know if we have time for these, but just very quickly, how they come together is that the yoga and your dosha, it's very important to understand. If you know your mind and body type and you go to a yoga class, and you know that if it's what type of foods you've eaten, how the season is affecting you as opposed to other people, so you're more in tune with what's happening with you. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. That's what Ayurveda teaches, that you are the master of who you are, and you should know yourself so that you can do things in a way that is best suited for you. So the Vata focus is to have, because they're more prone to constipation and dryness, they need to slow down their practice. They cannot come to a yoga class and just start doing things really fast, which is what they're going to do because their body and mind is movement. They're very fast. So they need to slow down. And I'm going to skip some of these and get to the end here. So I want to.
Well, you use yoga and Ayurveda as tools to heal. Can you share with us their health benefits?
The health benefits. Well, the health benefits are, you know, to reset your body metabolism, let go of stress in the mind, and it helps you with certain things like anxiety and not breathing properly and things like that. So it's very important. So I think we are out of time almost. So I am going to skip to the, I wanted to do a prayer before we end here. And
oh, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a universal prayer, and what it is for all beings in all the worlds. So it goes like this. Loka samastha sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May all beings in all the worlds be happy. Om, peace, peace, peace.
Thank you.